Great to see such a large and distinguished audience here, and thank you, Chairman of the Alliance, for allowing me the opportunity to say a few words today. What I'm going to do is to say a bit about English heritage, 5 years in now to our new arrangements, the new model as an independent charity, and then make a few observations about the heritage sector generally. Tom Jones from English Heritage has come along to do the slides for me, and it's so boring just following a script, putting slide after slide, so to make it more interesting for him, I haven't given him a copy of my script. This will add a little air of frisson, both to my life and possibly to yours as well. So this shows a quick snapshot of what we do. It's an interesting mélange of sites. The underlying theme is sites which tell the story of England, from Stonehenge, before Stonehenge, to the Romans, to the arrival of Christianity, the arrival of the Normans, the dissolution of the monasteries, battling the French again, the Industrial Revolution, the Cold War, Brexit, well maybe not Brexit yet, but perhaps that will come. What we are trying to do is to allow people to touch and feel history in the places where history actually happened. So, how are we doing as a charity, as I say, 5 years in? Well, progress is good overall, significantly better in terms of figures than we predicted when we started. Membership is growing well above the 1 million mark. Visitor numbers to our 100 or so staff sites, around about 6.5 million, which is close to an all-time high for English heritage sites. And overall, we're making steady progress towards the sunny uplands of financial independence, hopefully removing another millstone from the taxpayer's neck. We should not be relying on government support, revenue support, in about 3 years from now. We're doing two things in particular. One is spending more money than ever before on conservation. And the second is investing more in better facilities and better interpretation at our sites. Now, I'll illustrate those two things with a tale not of two cities, but of two bridges. Let's start with something that's been very much in the news for all the wrong reasons in the last few days, Iron Bridge. The flooding there is, or in that area, is really quite awkward at the moment. We completed a year or so ago the biggest restoration project on the bridge for 100 years. And this slide is what it looked like before. It's difficult to see in an overall slide, but lots of rust, lots of cracks, lots of worries about its structure which hadn't been addressed for a long time. If we show you the next slide, you see the bridge after the project was completed, restored to what we are fairly sure was its original colour. You'll notice on the slide that the clouds have rolled away, the sun has come out, and it's glowing in the view there. That project cost us around about £3.5 million, and we don't get a penny back for that. It's a free site, we don't charge people to cross the bridge or look at it. It's just simply an investment that we've done because we think it's really important that vital part of British history is properly looked after. I'm going to show you another slide of Tintagel now, which is that photograph taken I think yesterday or the day before. Again, it's difficult to appreciate the scale of what's going on there at the moment, but the water level is well up above the footings of the bridge on either side. You can just about see that, and lapping onto the roads either side. We're very much hoping that there won't be any permanent damage to the structure, and of course very concerned about those people who live and work in the gorge there. Let's move on to Tintagel Castle on the North Cornwall coast, one of our more interesting, most interesting historic sites, an important trading port with the Eastern Mediterranean in the 5th and 6th centuries, home to the kings of Cornwall from the 12th century, intriguing links to the legends of Tristan and Isolde, Merlin and King Arthur. And we built a new bridge there. We completed it last year. This is an aerial shot. I took it myself, actually. I was flying into the site with the wonderful people who donated quite a lot of the money to build the new bridge. This is looking down with the as it were, the mainland bit of the castle to the left and the sort of semi-island bit to the right. You can see the bridge there linking the two, and just in view lower down you can see the old bridge, and you used to have to walk down these very steep, rather dangerous steps and then back up the other side. So the new bridge, and there's a bit of a closer view of it, makes it much more accessible for people, not least for the for the less mobile. It also allows you to get a much better feel for the place, how the place worked in its heyday. You can see the site much better. It's of course attracting higher visitor numbers than before. People are going away from that visit with a much happier experience and a much better understanding of the site and its significance. And so we'll be generating more income from that site, which we can invest elsewhere, not least in the many sites we have in Cornwall which are free or which make a loss, and there are many of them. So in that sense, and in many other sites like this, we're putting investment in to attract more visitors, to give them a better experience, to make more income, which we can then invest in our 300 or so sites, amongst others, which are free to enter. I'm going to show you a couple more slides now demonstrating our routine conservation work. This is removing the dreaded ivy from the walls of Dover Castle. Ivy can be helpful in places, but it gets too much and you have to take it off. The next one is a wonderfully difficult photograph to interpret, but it's actually on a cherry picker up above the cenotaph in Whitehall, giving the cenotaph its annual spruce and clean. I went up on that cherry picker with the chap to have a look. It's a great sight. And again, something that we do on a routine basis. We don't get any financial return from it, but it's important to do it. And then the last picture, replacing the sails at Saxted Green Post Mill in Suffolk. An important bit of work that's been waiting to happen for some years. Do we conserve for its own sake, to ensure the longevity of our sites, or do we conserve so that we can better educate, better inform people about the history of this country? Discuss. Probably both, but sometimes we get lost in the idea of just conservation. I think it's very important that we don't forget that there's a purpose behind it. There are other purposes as well. We've rapidly grown the number of volunteers who help us in English Heritage. We started with a few hundred, I think, in 2015. We're up to about 3,500 now, possibly a bit more. This slide shows some of those who worked to recreate a Bronze Age roundhouse at Easton Castle in Cheshire. The volunteers included a dentist, a farmer, and a nuclear physicist. We're not fussy. We'll take anyone who's prepared to help. The next slide shows our volunteers at Dover Castle. They fire the midday gun, I think a couple of times a week or something, down there at Dover. A great team of people who love doing that, and the public who react to it. We're reaching out to local communities across the country in new and imaginative ways, and one example of that is that to mark the 75th anniversary of VE Day in May this year, we're breaking crockery in the background. We're supporting street parties up and down the country. We've got a bunch of dancers who are going out around the country demonstrating the kind of dance that would have taken place on that wonderful day. They're not reenacting World War II battles, they're reenacting the dances that followed it. I absolutely love this photograph. It just sums up the relief and excitement that people felt on that day, nearly 75 years ago. Now, as I showed two more slides illustrating the beauty of our sites, I just wanted to mention that we're shortly launching a programme of events exploring what it means to be English, voices of Englishness, examining the very diverse origins of England and the English. We in England are a very diverse group of people. We come from many different backgrounds over the centuries. We're going to piece together the jigsaw that makes up this fascinating part of the British Isles. So watch out for events that we're going to hold to pursue that theme this year. And then I just can't not mention, because it's going to be such a big issue for us this year, coronavirus. It's too early to say how it's going to affect us, but already it's starting to affect us. We've had many cancellations of talk parties and so forth. I suspect the whole sector will be affected, and as I say, too early to say about how much, but we're making whatever plans we can and hoping that governments around the world will do what they need to do to get this under control. Okay, well that's all I'm going to say about English heritage directly. Very happy to take a couple of questions on that if there's time later. Now just a few thoughts on broader heritage issues. Very few of the things that I have shown you on these slides have been done by English Heritage alone. Most have involved work with Historic England, some we've worked with the National Trust or the Royal Collection Trust, Historic Houses Association, Landmark Trust, many others across the heritage sector. People often say to me, you must compete with the National Trust or with historic royal palaces. Well, a bit of competition never did anyone any harm. It keeps you on your toes and it makes you think what customers really want. But overall, I think heritage bodies cooperate much more than they compete. This is I'm going to reach out for your imagination now. This delicious English heritage cake, I'm going to ask you to represent the whole heritage sector. We are not, in English heritage, trying to grow our slice of the heritage sector cake at the expense of others. I don't see the sector as a zero-sum game. It's not a question of we get more visitors so you get fewer. I think there's room for the whole sector to grow. I think there's room for the whole cake to get bigger. I think there are many factors which encourage us to think, coronavirus aside, that the whole sector has room to expand and grow. And especially, I would say, if we reach out to more diverse audiences, and I mean the word diverse in a great range of ways. So my first point is that I strongly believe we will all do better if we work together, and hence my enthusiasm for the Heritage Alliance and the work that you do in that alliance. My second point is about government's role in heritage. People often say we should be badgering government to do more for the sector. We've done a bit of badgering already this morning. I would turn that round a bit in a kind of John F. Kennedy way and say, ask not what your country can do for the heritage sector first, but ask what the heritage sector can do for the country. We can be more proactive. We can attract more visitors to the country. We can be more financially independent. Less need for government support. That is part of the point of what we are doing in English Heritage, what we're all about at the moment. But we do want government to enable our work better. And the biggest thing that this government can do to help the whole sector, Giles has talked about already in answering this question, is to remove the burden of charging the full rate of VAT on the repair of historic buildings. It's a relatively small price to pay for the Treasury when they're considering all their other sums that they have to consider in the spending review. But it's a very large benefit for jobs in our sector in every part of the country, in every corner, in every bit, south, north, west and east. And it would be a great boost to conserving the heritage of this country. We all need to repeat this message. I make no apologies for saying it again. It already has been mentioned this morning. And my final point is, are we collectively doing enough to protect the heritage at risk in the UK? That's a photograph of Queen Street Mill in Burnley, which the National Trust and we are, and Historic England are working to try and find a solution for. Well, first I would pay tribute to the thousands, actually probably tens of thousands of private individuals who look after the great majority of heritage in this country, and it's great to hear that the new Parliamentary Under Secretary of State himself is a heritage owner. And I pay tribute to all of you in this room who are doing so much. for that. Private owners do a fantastic job, guided, of course, and regulated by our colleagues in Historic England. But there's still a long list of important heritage which is at risk. I think the principal heritage bodies and organisations could do more to work together on this. My experience with historic ships is that the key issue is prioritisation. In the historic ships world, I think the country has done a pretty good job at focusing on those ships which it really is important to save and doing a really good job on them, and accepting that some of less importance will have to go. And I think that maybe in the heritage sector we have to do the same. I don't think it's going to be possible to save everything. It will be necessary in some cases to examine, explore, record, and then let go, I think. It's all about prioritisation. I think the Heritage Alliance will play an important role in this. We had an interesting discussion about it over a dinner of heritage chairs the other day, and I look forward to further discussions on what the nation as a whole has the resources to protect. So just summing up my key messages, the New English heritage is thriving. I'm delighted to say we're investing more in conservation and in our visitor experiences. There's scope for the heritage sector in this country to grow as a whole, I firmly believe, especially if we all work together. We don't want all that much from government, we want a bit. We're not sponges, but boy would we like them to solve the VAT problem for us. And we should all be working more closely together, I think, to protect our heritage at risk. On that note, Peter, I will stop, and if it's time, very happy to answer a few questions.